What is up? Welcome back to the Best Ball Boardroom, possibly a special edition of the Best Ball Boardroom. Obviously special because of the great guest we have, but it is Superflex season. Underdog dropped the latest Chihuahua with a Superflex kind of style to it. That has been getting filled up over the weekend. I've been diving in. Chat, let us know. It is going to be up to you all. Are we doing a BBM? Are we doing a Superflex draft? You all are going to let us know. You'll decide for us. But in the meantime, who do we have joining us today? One of the OGs. You probably know the worksheet that he puts out on a weekly basis. Recently joined Sharp Football Analysis. None other than one of the sharpest fantasy football experts in the industry, Lord Reeves, Mr. Rich Rebar. How are we doing?
Doing real good, Justin. I'm excited. Me and you got to meet in person for the first time a couple weeks ago at the FSGA in Cleveland. And this is my first time I've ever been on any ETR show, so it's really cool, man, to come over here for the first time and join you guys. I love everything you guys have been building up the last few years at ETR. Obviously, I'm really good close friends with Evan, and it's great to finally get on one of these shows.
Love it. Yeah. Well, long overdue. And we what was that? Up in Cleveland. I mean, your little hometown. I was flying up from Florida. Had a little, we had to put a panel together, talked about some AI and how it was going to disrupt the industry. It was interesting. It was fun.
Yeah. You basically came in. You were one of the few people that actually just flew into Cleveland for a couple hours and had to shoot back out. No one ever does that. But you did that.
It was crazy as well. And then literally so I flew into Cleveland that morning, flew out of Cleveland to Philly that night. Ended up having a family thing where literally the next morning I jumped from Philly back to Florida. It was a crazy 24 hours plane hopping. But yeah, and we had to take a week off in the Best Ball Boardroom, but we are back in drafting, and it is June 26th. How many drafts have you done so far? I know you've been putting out some little tidbits, some content, some nuggets on Twitter. What's your best ball kind of summer looking like?
Yeah, so far, I mean, I don't have nearly the volume like a lot of you guys. I do mostly a lot of league play and then dabble in tournaments just because it's a little bit of a different beast. I'm out here for the ROI a little bit and instead chasing the lottery tickets. But I do dabble in the Best Ball Manias. I had a finals team last year. I didn't do quite as good as Crane's, but it was a good run, and we ended up doing a really good like 10x value in the Best Ball Mania last year. So hopefully we can run it back and come back in just a little positive area again this summer.
I love that. All right, I'm seeing chat come through. We've got 1 Superflex, 2 Superflex, 3 Superflex, but then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 BBMs right now. We are leaning towards the BBM unless there is a strong push for Superflex. 5-3. We'll give you all another minute. In the background, I'm going to start getting the Underdog site up and running. What are I know you've been in the industry for a long time. You've been doing fantasy football analysis for a while. How is this year different, whether it's players, projections, analysis, industry, whatever you want to go on, but what do you think makes this year different?
Hey, I was joking with someone, the original Konami Code article, it will be 10 years old this September, which, it makes me feel old in the industry. I feel old anyways. I just had my oldest son just graduated high school, which made me feel real old as well. But, just everything has changed so much in that decade since I've been in the industry. I mean, you just think of like the stats that are covered, the baseline knowledge that gamers have. The general population is just a lot sharper than it's ever been. I'm real curious to see this year where we kind of get like the recoil too, because I was real adamant at this point last season of telling everyone like, hey, we don't know where the regression is going to lie coming off of these 2 years that were influenced by the pandemic. We knew scoring was going to come down dramatically, and it was literally the worst scoring season basically since 2017 and one of the last lowest scoring seasons of literally the past decade. So I'm curious to see if there's any kind of recoil. The NFL is also changing, even outside of the pandemic influence. We've seen NFL teams, the way they're structurally approaching slowing down some of these offenses. We're seeing less man coverage play than ever before. We're seeing less QB blitzing than ever before. It's kind of brought the running game back a little bit. I don't want to say that, running is definitely still not as optimal as passing, but we've seen rushing actually have its highest influence in EPA per play than it has in over the past decade last year. So if a lot of these teams are still going to be playing, shell coverage, not allowing teams to, go over the top and blitzkrieg them for a 3-play touchdown drive. Is it still going to be one of these things that, teams have to matriculate? They have to get production out of their running backs and have to get efficiency through their offense over just getting big plays. And I think that this a really interesting dynamic. The NFL is cyclical. Like cover 2 and, shell coverage wasn't invented like the last 2 years, right? Like, although people kind of, took that to the 9th degree. Like my grandma now knows 2 high safeties because of what happened to the Chiefs a couple years ago and what's happened to the Bengals. But these are concepts that have existed for literally decades of football. And we're going to see like that counterpunch. Defenses counterpunch last year. Let's see what offenses come back and do this year.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And I think the running backs is really interesting where we in the fantasy industry have been talking about running backs don't matter. We've been seeing either the decline of the position or really more so it's moving away from the kind of bell cows more towards either skill set based roles for the players, or some it's just like literally this series is, I feel like the James Cook, Devin Singletary was like literally just series by series swapping back and forth. And now we have the summer of running backs, maybe Le'Veon Bell 4 years ago, holding out, but like now we're starting to see 4 veterans and no one wants to sign them. And, very few teams are actually using that workhorse. We are at the top of the draft. We did do a BBM because the BBM votes kept coming through. We have pick number 9. I love me some Eckler. Any reason not to go with this, or how are you feeling?
No, I'm fine with that. I think where we are, we're at 8. We're 8 or 9.
9. Kelsey went at 8.
That's kind of a unique spot. Like either in this spot too, I almost always split the baby or go, wide receiver. But I think Eckler right here, just from like upside stance of being basically RB1, RB2 the last 2 years, getting a guy like Kellen Moore who knows how to utilize a guy at this skill set, what he's done with Tony Pollard. Definitely feel good about all things, with Austin Eckler. They didn't bring anybody like real competition either. And you look at what the backs outside of Austin Eckler did with the Chargers last year, they did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, completely agree. Josh Kelly, I think he had one game where he did pretty well, where it was just kind of in that replacement piece. Overall, I was a little cautious, maybe hesitant around Austin Eckler a month or 2 ago, because when he came out saying he wanted to get a new contract, get traded, whatever it was, I think we just got to completely forget about that now, ignore it. Now we got to think about Kellen Moore coming in. We got to think about, with a healthy wide receiver core, bringing in Quentin Johnson as well. Like this team could just be absolutely dynamic. And if Eckler's, maybe his target volume goes down a little because of healthy wide receivers, but from an efficiency and touchdowns, he's still a very solid, I think, number 2 overall running back for me. One thing I'm noticing with this draft that I want to keep an eye on is in the first 7, it looks like wide receivers are a bit valued more than you'd expect, with McCaffrey dropping to 5, A.J. Brown and Diggs going above Kelsey. So this could be a heavy wide receiver room. We'll probably want to kind of target
Is it
a wide
underdog?
receiver this next one.
The current meta, the way it's kind of shaped up the to start the season, is almost inviting you to go wide receiver, running back, and then just wide receiver, tight end, quarterback conglomeration for the next several rounds, come back to running back, or go with like an anchor running back approach, just because the wide receiver is flying off. So we've got to go wide receiver here, I believe, even though we've got a guy like Saquon still on the board, unless we want to get really creative. But we'll really be chasing the rest of the way out.
Yeah, and we're actually even getting fairly unique with an Eckler Devontae start here. Devontae falling to 16 just feels crazy. Like, I don't know if people are scared of the Jimmy G. Like, have you seen what Devontae's able to do with quarterbacks that are less than Jimmy G in the past? Doesn't really make sense to me. Why is he falling, grabbing Jalen Waddle ahead of him? I don't know. I get Garrett Wilson, but I'm honestly taking Devontae ahead of all 3 of these wide receivers that went between us and the turn.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just a little spooked of maybe the unknown of will even Jimmy Garoppolo be playing, with the foot injury, and kind of seeing like where things go until we get some clarity there. By all indications, I think he will be there. And it's just going to be a shift back to Devontae Adams. There's a lot you could really take Josh McDaniels apart for as a head coach. Definitely I've done it as well. But if you look at the past 2 years, his offenses are hyper productive in terms of scoring. He had a rookie, Mac Jones, and they were 6th in the league in scoring per drive 2 years ago. And then last year, the Raiders were 8th in scoring per drive, with Derek Carr having one of his worst seasons ever. So he can still coach up offense, even though all the other shortcomings Josh McDaniels has. The interesting thing, too, is there'll be a shift in style of play going from Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr. You look at Devontae Adams, his ADOT, deep target rate, everything was like the highest it's ever been in his career. Now he's going to get more back to being like that intermediate, kind of having more efficiency. So he's going to need a little bit more volume instead of the big play stuff. But still, just look at the trackers Devontae Adams had. Like, he's pretty safe bet here.
What are you thinking with Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow and the rest of that offense? It feels like, obviously, we lost Darren Waller. So that's going to open up a ton of targets. But it feels like, obviously, Hunter Renfrow and Jacoby Myers feel a bit duplicative in their roles. I don't know. What do you think that looks like this year?
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby Myers was good playing outside last year. It was kind of against the grain for the norm of his career, though. I mean, prior to that, he was a lot better in the slot than outside. So maybe they're looking at some of those splits. Obviously, Josh McDaniels, had him in New England, so they're familiar with each other. But as a whole, I think the Raiders' offense is actually undervalued for the reasons I said. Like, you look at what Josh McDaniels has gotten out of his past two offenses. Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs are the only expensive players here. If this is like an above average scoring rate offense, I mean, whether it be Michael Mayer, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, even maybe a guy like Zamir White, if something happens to Josh Jacobs, there's probably a little more value here than people are assuming with the Raiders. And they're going to in a division where you have to score points.
Yeah, completely hear that. All right, we'll go back. We got some interesting things happening in this draft right now. We are at that kind of weird zone where the running backs have fallen off. Debo, Keenan Allen for the Chargers stack. Any thoughts on kind of these guys or someone else that we should be considering?
Yeah, I mean, going with the full Chargers plunge is not the worst scenario here. I think from this style and format, Debo's probably the better player for the spike weeks. You
got 5 seconds. You got to give me one.
I say Debo.
Okay.
So I would take Keenan in a redraft league over Debo Samuel. But in this format where it's not full PPR and we're looking for splash weeks, I mean, I want the guy that could score from 60 yards away.
Yeah, if Debo's actually if Debo can actually make this work. And then honestly, I kind of like going with a Mike Williams and Austin Eckler a little bit more than Keenan Allen, because we think of Keenan Allen as that volume play. I like Keenan Allen better than Mike Williams in this offense, no question. But if I'm also trying to stack with Austin Eckler and go with that kind of running back wide receiver and maybe Herbert later, I want the big play ability from Mike Williams, even if not run after the catch, but from the touchdowns, from the larger ADOT, rather than if Keenan Allen has 12 targets, that's going to eat into Austin Eckler having that also top 10% outcome game. All right, so first off, let's give a quick high. I know we saw Berg. We got in number 2. We got, who was it? We got Wilk here with pick 7. We got Ben May in pick 6. Lots of fun family draft going on here.
Snipe City.
We got Berg over here going Cincy, KC, playing for that week 17. We got hit him with the gritty, going Bully tight end, Kelsey Andrews and stacking with Lamar. Very unique there. Batch going 3 straight RBs and Burks going 3 straight wide receivers. Interesting stuff. We're coming back around now. Let's see what we're working with. All right.
Yeah, Saquon, real great second round pick there.
So ETN is if we needed a running back. I don't feel like we need to jump for that. We could go with the Mike Williams that we discussed here. Do you feel strongly on ETN? What would you do here?
Yeah, I would still go wide receiver just based on doing a number of these drafts, just so that, knowing that there's going to be an absolute cutoff where this thing avalanches on us. And if we're going to take a guy like Mike Williams as our 3, if we bypass that, we're going to be in a lot worse situation coming back.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go with Mike Williams. One thing I like about this too is Keenan Allen went here at the 36. I was hoping Keenan Allen was going to go in this group. Either if he goes there, we have more confidence that we can get Justin Herbert at this 57 spot, or if he fell, we could then, grab that as well and see if we go with a very power stack. But I think we can probably plan on hey, maybe we take Herbert with 57, grab that full Chargers stack going on, and not a horrible start for what we're looking at. We have Herbert ADP at 55, so it makes sense he should fall to us at 57 without the Keenan Allen drafter kind of trying to snipe over stack him.
Yeah, or chat, coming for the sabotage.
Of course, always happens.
We know chat likes to come in for the stream snipe.
Yeah, Terrence Charles here saying, hey, maybe we should take a look at some Quentin Johnson later on. He would have gone Kirk. That's okay. I like, in a vacuum, Christian Kirk over Mike Williams. ETR is definitely a fan of that with the ranks wise. But we're making a bet on the Chargers. makes sense that we go with the Mike Williams pick there.
I'm a little hesitant on the Jaguars as a whole. I mean, the state of that offensive line is so bad right now coming into the season, especially with the Cam Robinson suspension. And then when you look at Kirk and his peripherals, like he was a true wide receiver 3 that kind of outkicked his performance, and that was without Calvin Ridley. I mean, he was 36 in target rate per route run amongst all wide receivers. I mean, he was a top 30 scorer in just 3 of his final 7 games as Zay Jones came on and Evan Ingram came on. So I'm a little more hesitant, I think, on Christian Kirk in general. And I'm a little more hesitant on the Jaguar ceiling than I think the public is too.
Bad offensive line. Who do you think takes the biggest hit in that offense from a bad offensive line?
Oh, the running backs for sure. The rushing efficiency. I mean, obviously ETN will be more, he still gets a splash play runner, but the consistency per run, and with him not having that receiving ability, he never had more than 3 catches in a game last season. I think that he takes probably the biggest hit just because it adds volatility. I mean, Lawrence is still gonna be fine, I think, just from a volume perspective, because he's gonna get the ball out. But I do think that the offense definitely maybe has more limitations than people are assuming.
And would that then be Calvin Ridley from a wide receiver perspective? I assume he would have the largest ADOT on that team. Obviously, we haven't seen him in football in a while. Like, I don't know, but just based off what we saw out of the Falcons and kind of his trajectory, I assume that means maybe it hurts him a little because just less time for plays to develop.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone as a whole, like it might be more of like a conglomeration, right? Like where Lawrence, you just want the syrup and not the pancakes, right? Like, yeah. So you just soak it up with Lawrence, but I think there's gonna be a lot of weekly kind of jumping around here of who hits. Is it Evan Ingram game? Is it a Christian Kirk game? Is it a Zay Jones? Like Zay Jones isn't just gonna go away. Right. Is it a Calvin Ridley game? Like all of those are gonna probably have some cattywampus results.
Yeah, and I do like Zay Jones. Combination of one is we are almost up, but where he's being drafted in drafts kind of right after that wide receiver dead zone. But then also the contingency value if one of the other guys get hurt ahead of him. Any reason not to go Herbert? We assume if we were let him fall, Keenan Allen, Sean G would stack him up. So probably makes sense to grab him here. All right, easy.
Just let it come to us.
Yeah. Coming back now. So we've got our QB, we've got a running back, got 3 wide receivers. We're in an area of the zone where like, hey, we probably only have 2 more picks that we could get one of those like legit wide receivers. 81 is honestly even cutting a little close. How would you kind of handle where like there's a lot of running backs we like in this spot, but if you go with a running back here, you're then saying I may only have 3 kind of those legit wide receivers, because if we look at ADP, there is Quentin Johnston. We can probably try to target that. That's a lot of Chargers. But like, gosh, there's a big drop off after. That's where that dead zone of wide receivers kind of starts.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's definitely, I think at this point of the draft in round 6, leaving a guy like Aaron Jones out there is really hard, especially because, his spike week potential already with AJ Dillon. If AJ Dillon were to miss any time, he's like basically a front end RB1. Even playing with a guy like Jordan Love. I mean, what if Jordan Love is just adequate, right? Like, this could be a better outcome for the Packers in general. I think he's really tough to leave on the board, but like you said, we will be chasing. The one thing I'll say, if we do take Aaron Jones, we can basically kind of just come back and throw darts at running back the rest of the way. Because I mean, who's the top of the receiver board? I think it's Kadarius Toney,
Mike Evans, JSN, Jordan Addison.
Yeah, and I think we're already in a fall off and a decline where we're already talking about a lot of volatility, anyways, and we're looking at more floor play types at wide receiver outside of probably Mike Evans.
Talk me through Kenneth Walker versus Aaron Jones. I usually end up leaning up. Kenneth Walker just went. You do not need to talk me into Kenneth Walker. Who would you have hypothetically gone with between those 2?
I still think Aaron Jones because of the 50+ reception upside, and we just even on underdog is half-point PPR. I mean, the receiving weight. If AJ, the thing with Aaron Jones is like he's just been completely touchdown dependent the past years, and a guy like AJ Dillon is soaking up those inside the 5 carries. But if AJ Dillon were to miss any time, we already know the ceiling, and we already know where the spike weeks still are. Even last season, Aaron Jones still had, all 5 games of the RB1 production. They all came with games of touchdowns, though, unfortunately. But having him and Eckler in like the range of outcomes where you could potentially still have 2 RB1s and getting one in the 6th round, I still think is pretty exciting.
Okay. Thinking ahead, pick 81 is where Quentin Johnston's ADP falls in. What are your thoughts on, would you be willing to do a Quentin Johnston? Now you've got Eckler, Mike Williams, and Quentin Johnston, or in your mind, is that too many players, too much draft capital from one offense?
I mean, it's probably unnecessary. It depends on who is like we're taking Quentin Johnston over, though, as well. I like Quentin Johnston for the splash playability, but year one, what's Quentin Johnston's role going to be, right? Like, we know that we've got target earners in Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, and you add a guy like Mike Williams, who is a big play guy. Like, these guys are still going to be 1, 2, 3 target order, right? So are we going to take the fourth target on a team, or potentially fifth target on a team, over a guy that maybe is like the third target on his team, or maybe even second target on like a worse team? I think that's where it comes down to. But I don't mind going all in on the stack either, because, if anything, obviously it's contingent value on Mike Williams. If anyone were to fill Mike Williams' role through Mike Williams' injury, it would be that. But we're using 2 picks to occupy one spot, though.
Right. Yeah. If anything, like, you could see a world where, Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen on the field together, both thriving. If Keenan Allen went down, I'm not sure what that offense really looks like with Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston. Like, I honestly could see Josh Palmer kind of playing a more, at least in the midterm, like active role, or maybe just more spread out or something to fill Keenan Allen's targets.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you'd want to play Quentin Johnston as a big slot. I mean, at TCU, that's where he had like a ton of his success at. He didn't play in there a lot, but that's the easiest transition spot because he's so good with the football in his hands. But Keenan is soaking up that role right now. And you've got a guy like Gerald Everett still occupying targets in the airfield, and Eckler makes it kind of tough. Makes it really tricky.
Kellen Moore has some opportunity, has a lot of talent there to see what he can do with this year. It's going to be interesting. All right,
I know one of the, I think 8's in the draft for us, but I mean, a player I absolutely love is on the board still. He just went. We got, I was going to say Brandon Cooks would have been absolutely the home run pick there.
That would not have been bad. So we do have the Quentin Johnston. Do we do it? We're just doing onslaught, or the other options would be it's a really strong.
Yeah, see, I would much rather have any of the guys below Quentin Johnston versus Quentin Johnston, like Bateman. You're talking about maybe the potential like wide receiver 1 on his team and just as much splash playability. If we wanted to take a tight end, Darren Waller is a nice firewall option. Sutton gives us a run back, week 17 run back with the Chargers. That's their week 17 opponent, correct?
Yes, it is. Maybe we can grab Sutton here at the 88 with his ADP of 93. Kind of ran out of time there. But
that's all right. But yeah, I mean, if any one of those guys are left, I am good with those guys. I mean, Sutton, Bateman, Waller, I think are all really good picks.
I like that. Bateman versus Flowers. What's your take here? Obviously, like ADP wise, they're back to back. I don't know. I have difficulty with those two. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just really high at Bateman as a prospect coming out. He was a guy in my models, like really looked a lot like kind of the similar prospect to Justin Jefferson. Now, we're not going to get that run out with Bateman, but a guy that can win inside, can win outside. He's been extremely productive when on the field his first 2 years in the NFL. He just needs to stay on the field. And you look at the Ravens in general, I mean, there's a huge signal. Like, they're going to throw the ball a lot more and play with a lot more tempo than they have in years past, especially with Todd Monken. They're going to have more 3 wide receiver sets, I think, than any year that Lamar Jackson's played. So, I mean, I just look at Bateman. I think he's one of the better best ball values. There might be some volatility week to week, but especially over a rookie like Zay Flowers, I definitely want to go in on Bateman, who has proven production, was an elite prospect coming out.
Any concern with these shots, this maybe lingering injury?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the I haven't done like a deep dive into like the medical background of everybody. I do always have a few of the guys on the shows towards like draft season. But I haven't seen like any of like the Twitter docs like really start to like throw their arms up and say it's a big red flag right now.
Yeah, I know Levitan looked a little into it, and there was obviously the initial kind of concern that, hey, someone who, lingering issue, but then the more he looked into it, apparently, like, this is just normal kind of routine maintenance at this point for that level of injury. He doesn't seem too concerned. I agree with you. I think from an upside standpoint, Bateman is the better option. If you're talking, I'm just kind of concerned as well, like overall with volume from a passing in that offense. Like, Lamar's not just randomly going to go from 400 to 600 pass attempts just because we have Todd Monken there. And so Zay Flowers, I think, like, can be a higher volume kind of underneath play. But if the offense isn't really tuned for a high volume play, maybe you do want to make the bet that Bateman actually is just the one who kind of rises the alpha next to Mark Andrews. I'm willing to buy that. That's my slight lean.
Yeah, I think Flowers, from a best ball stance, he's going to hit you like with those four. He's going to have games where he has like a 40-yard touchdown.
Just run after catch.
Yeah, he was one of the highest prospects in yardage created off of double moves. He just played at the quarterback. That was an absolute travesty at Boston College. So getting a guy that can move the ball down. Lamar's a lot better passer than people give him credit for too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's do a quick redraft.
It is interesting though that the Lamar is like basically moved and locked in as QB4, and no one outside of Andrews has moved in that offense.
I mean, except for Beckham. Like Odell's ADP, where is it right now? It's insane, 111. I don't know who's doing the drafting of it. It just it doesn't, like, all the content creators, all the kind of experts in the industry, like no one is on Odell. But somehow his ADP like has stayed, if even risen. I think it was in like the 120s, maybe 132 at some point, to that 111 spot. It blows my mind.
Maybe it's just stacking.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you could be going with maybe bring back for Tua. I think a little of it is just like there's, in every draft, there's that one person who's just getting into it. They see that name. It's tied to Lamar. It's a lot more familiar of a name than Bateman or Zay Flowers. So, like, it's easy to think, oh, yeah, Odell should be the number one in that offense. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with some kind of reasons here. All right, we've got a 1-2-5. We're coming back up around on the clock. Wide receiver dead zone has officially happened. I don't think we need to really reach for a QB. I do like Pat Freiermuth a lot. There's some running backs I like as well. I'm just going to throw a couple in the queue. Brian Robinson, Pat Freiermuth, David Njoku. Any thoughts on any of these guys?
Yeah, being on the queue is good, especially because I tend to talk through like most of the draft anyway. So, we're on the clock right now too. I would say Freiermuth's probably easily the best player that's available at the top.
I like that too. Talk through Freiermuth for me. I know, hey, first 2 seasons, he's looked really good from a kind of secondary, from those next-gen stats standpoint. His peripherals kind of show that even though he had a decrease in touchdowns in year 2, from what was it, maybe 6 in year 1, 2 in year 2, something around that. A lot of the breakout from a third-year tight end, there's some signal there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's been targeted on over 20% of his routes the first few years. And listen, Kenny Pickett had the lowest touchdown rate in the NFL. Nobody scored touchdowns on the Steelers last year. There's only one way to go but up for regression to the mean. Some of these guys are going to score some touchdowns this year. But yeah, he's already established himself as a target earner when on the field. He's another one of these guys. We just need him to play a full season right now.
Yeah, and I was off by 1. 7 touchdowns his rookie season, 2 last year. Still very impressive those first 2 years. And as you said, literally no one, not even Deontay had touchdowns in that offense last year. I am actually also high on Kenny Pickett. And from a drafting standpoint, this feels like a decent spot where if you were to go, just making sure buys like Kenny Pickett as your number 2 QB with Justin Herbert, that's a nice draft capital fit. And Freiermuth, gives us that stack if we want it for later.
Yeah, absolutely. The Steelers only scored 2 touchdowns outside of the red zone last year. That was the fewest in my database of 30 years of NFL. So it's going to revert somehow. They're going to score more than 2 from outside the red zone.
Yeah, I feel that. All right. Running back feels like a spot. Brian Robinson just went. We've got Kamara, Damian Harris, Elijah Mitchell. We could go with that second QB if we wanted to. It would be unstacked. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're still chasing wide receivers. I mean, this is probably going to be an 8 wide receiver team, right? I mean, I would think. But it doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm looking at Quentin Johnston and saying like, all right, what are we going to get out of that spot?
Yeah, that's true.
The back half of the season, Kamara stuff. We were on the clock there.
I threw Damian Harris in there just because we needed another running back, and these wide receivers are ugly. But I agree with you. We'll keep going with some strong wide receivers going forward. Yeah,
back half of the season, Alvin Kamara, I think, is going to be interesting. It's He's a really tough guy to nail because there's a clear signal that the Saints want to use him like he was earlier in his career. The past 2 years, Alvin Kamara has run into 8-man boxes at the highest rate of his career. They don't want to do that again. I don't think they want to. That's why they got a grinder. Then the question is with Alvin Kamara is, do the receptions ever bounce back and do the touchdowns ever bounce back? Because now you add Jamal Williams with Taysom Hill for a guy that hasn't gotten any carries inside the 5 the past 2 years. Like, do those two things come back? He's a very interesting player because even if he gets suspended for the opening 6 games, say as a high end, you're still getting 10 games of him, but do we get that old Alvin Kamara back, right? Is he going to catch a bunch of passes and can he score touchdowns? That's what carried him for all those years when he wasn't a high touch count player. And I think the Saints want to get him back to being that, but do we get those money touches? And it still kind of takes a lot of projection to say, like, yeah, he's going to bounce back and catch 70-plus passes and flirt with double-digit touchdowns. It's hard to see both of those playing out.
I mean, even as a thought exercise, let's just say, hey, we found out tomorrow that he is not going to be suspended at all for the season. How much higher does he actually go? Like, I'm not taking him above James Conner, who's got the whole backfield to himself. James Cook, Antonio Gibson, like,
yeah, he would jump those guys.
AJ Dillon, Javonte. I think it's probably right after James Conner. I don't know. Maybe at James Conner, something around that. But I guess my point is, in my mind, I don't think he jumps more than a round or two. Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking him above Pacheco or Conner. That's just maybe that's just me, but I'd be surprised to see him climb too much above those.
Yeah, I think he, in ADP wise, he would get probably over Pacheco just for name awareness, but like kind of the Odell factor that you said, like I'll just click Alvin Kamara, right? Like that's what people will say.
Poll in the chat. Chat, if Kamara was not suspended, we found out tomorrow he will not be suspended for the entire season, where do you think his ADP goes? Put it in chat. Or if you've got another running back that you think he'll be near, we can compare that too. All right. We've got a naked Kirk Cousins falling.
I think it's definitely interesting.
Naked Kirk Cousins?
No. I was talking about just like the whole dichotomy around Alvin Kamara. I think
we are on the clock. It is an ugly spot to be at. Nico Collins, Michael Gallup. I do like Nico. It gives us maybe a backstore Houston stack.
Yeah, I'd say Nico or Gallup here would probably be the two best options.
Okay. Have Nico, mainly just because of that backstore stack potential with Dak obviously already going. We do have another pick coming up in a few. Any of these other players, so we can put Gallup in there. Let's talk tight ends real quick. Normally, when I draft someone like Freiermuth, I'm content just spending my last 2-round picks with getting late tight ends, unless there's someone like, hey, you feel strongly about. We got Schultz, Chig, Dalton Kincaid. Feels kind of wishy-washy, iffy to me.
Yeah, Chig's probably the only guy that you're looking upside. I mean, I generally don't like drafting players on these just offenses that we don't expect to be good. Although we did just take Nico Collins, but it's all right.
I mean, hey, if you're going to be the number one in that offense, and I think Nico Collins might actually be decent, so I don't hate that one. All right, coming back around to us, we still have maybe Jaylen Warren, where it'd be our 4th running back. It also helps us from that Pitt standpoint if we wanted to grab Kenny Pickett later. It's kind of a bet that, hey, this isn't going to be a ground and pound Najee offense. And if that's the case, Jaylen probably rises a bit. So I don't hate that one. The other one is naked Kirk Cousins, 2.5 rounds past ADP. Okay.
Yep, there you go. There's for the chat. Yeah, I mean, really, I think Okonkwo is probably still the best upside guy. If we want to go Warren needs an injury. The thing with Warren is he's exciting, but there's really no way he provides usable weeks without an injury, right?
Really?
I guess we're at that point of the draft. I mean, yeah, you look at it.
I think there's a path to him out playing Najee. I mean, this is
he did it last year, but the Steelers still continue to just use Najee Harris. That they still continue to do that. That's kind of the rub. For the best ball scenario, it's great. A little bit better than it is redraft, because in redraft, say you take a guy like Jaylen Warren, you're never going to want to cut him, right? Because of the contingent upside, but you're also never going to put him in your lineup.
Unless Najee's down.
Unless Najee's out. So it is a better format for that. But I still think he needs an injury to actually kind of hit.
I think that's fair. And hey, if you're drafting running backs in the 12th round, we're kind of in that situation anyways.
Right.
All right, let's go back to the chat. What do they think? Let's see. All right. Well,
Everyone seems to say
this is an unserious person. 66 near Dameon Pierce. Be aggressive, but I think that's possible where Miles Sanders goes. All right. Seems like people are going around this Sanders Pierce. That would be.
Yeah, I think he'd be like in that RB 18 to 24 range. Like if people just knew he wasn't suspended.
And who's RB 18? That's
like post Kenneth Walker, right? Like
that's crazy. Wow. I mean, they drafted a rookie. They've got Jamal Williams.
Taysom.
Do people not realize he was bad? Like, he may not be good anymore. That happens to running backs. They fall off a cliff very quickly, and all the signs show that Alvin Kamara may have fallen off that cliff. I feel like I'm in Looney Town.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a clear indication they're going to get to using him back as like a more space player than he was the last 2 years, and that's why they got a guy like Jamal Williams. But again, like, are we going to get goal line carries? Is he going to flirt with 70 receptions again? I think those are the two biggest questions. I mean, I saw someone in the chat bring up the Saints' strength of schedule, which is absolutely amazing. The Saints look like they realistically could start the season 6-0. Like, granted, every time we say that, someone drops a game, but it is interesting when you look at the Saints. The Saints in general, because I think a couple guys are really undervalued. I think Juwan Johnson's really undervalued on the Saints. Because Derek Carr won't be in that, kind of having to be like that downfield gunslinger that we talked about with Devontae Adams. It's gonna be a lot more intermediate Derek Carr this year than we saw last year.
Yeah. All right. It is an ugly part of the draft right now. I've got Jared Goff up here just because we're getting 2 rounds of value, and I think it's just like a number 2 that's not that bad. We could still stack with like a Laporta or something later on as well.
Oh, yeah, I have no problem with Jared Goff as a QB too.
Okay. Did that. Shores up. I think that's pretty strong value to go with the Justin Herbert, so we're happy there. Let's do a quick refresher on the team and think through like where we want to devote the rest of our, what are we at? We got 14, 15. We got 5 more rounds. 2 QBs, Herbert and Goff. Running backs, we got Eckler, Aaron Jones, Damian Harris, Jalen Warren. Wide receivers, Devontae, Debo, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Cortland Sutton, Nico Collins, and Pat Freiermuth at tight end. Where are you thinking in these next 5 spots we should really be focusing?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple guys I think we can definitely throw in the queue. I don't know if Juwan Johnson, like I said, is still out there. He's a guy for late rounds. I think one of the most overlooked guys is Corey Davis. Especially Corey Davis is a guy with like actual pedigree, and there's been times where he's outplayed. He's been the Jets' best wide receiver. I think he's clearly talented. So he's by far playing the best quarterback of his career, and he's going to be on the field because he's such a good run blocker. I think Corey Davis definitely gets overlooked in this Jets kind of like, storm of like the tide, Rodgers raising the tide of all of these guys.
So do we think it's 3 wide receiver sets of Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, and Corey Davis,
Yes.
and then Mecole Hardman kind of just subs in, plays your, runs his flank routes, and
And I don't think it's granted Rodgers could get his guy back on the field, but Corey Davis has actually been a better in the run game than Allen Lazard has the last 2 years too as well. So it could be a thing where Lazard's the 3 wide receiver guy when they go 3 wide, and then Corey Davis goes inside, plays big slot. Or Garrett Wilson dabbled in the slot last year and then moved outside. So like they're getting options, but I just think as like a late round guy, Corey Davis is a guy that I think is a guy that could definitely score. Like if Corey Davis scored 6 to 8 touchdowns, would you be blown away?
No, I mean, I could definitely see a lot of 6 for 60 and a touchdown games in that offense for him. And if you're getting in the last round, that's fantastic.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to change the tides of your league. But I think in these, especially for where he goes, he's a really sound pick where he goes.
Yeah. All right, Gerald Everett, we need another tight end. We're just going full onslaught with the Chargers. Good with it, or too many Chargers?
Yeah, run it.
All right. And so talking real quick through this, because I know a lot of people are like, I mean, there's no way you're going to use Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson, and Gerald Everett in week 17. So aren't you just burning roster spots? And my response there is you are probably right, but we are making a major bet that this Chargers offense is just going to be like a top 3, top 5 passing offense. And in that situation, Those players may not all be necessary in week 17, but you can still have 3-4 of them go off, and the other ones can help you get there, especially in the playoffs. Say, Quentin Johnston goes off for 2 touchdowns and 100 yards in week 16. You're going to have a lot of Quentin Johnston teams in the championship. Maybe your way to differentiate in that final round then is with the Gerald Everett or the Eckler or the Mike Williams touchdowns. So especially I'm not concerned about adding a late tight end as another piece of draft capital, because honestly, for Gerald Everett to surpass his value, what does he need on the year? Like 7 touchdowns, 600 yards? No, that'd actually be a great year. More like 4 touchdowns and 600 yards would probably actually be about his value.
We know that Kellen Moore loves the tight ends, especially in the red zone. So it's going to be interesting to see if Gerald Everett is a guy that ends up out kicking. He's another one of these guys that's just hard to project, right? Because of the target tree. Like Eckler and Keenan command so many targets. Yeah. And then you add Mike Williams, you add Quentin Johnston. It's like there's a finite amount of touches for where the football could go.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to ever root for injuries, but this team is basically, hey, Keenan Allen gets hurt, and everyone else really just absorbs that extra target volume.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with throwing those darts. Like you said, you have to think about it not just from a week 17 stance, but a week 15, 16, 17, where it kind of rotates. My team that ended up going really far last year was because of KJ Osborne, right? The rotation. It was literally where KJ Osborne had his spike weeks. It was a Viking stacked team, and KJ Osborne was the guy who tilted it. So maybe that's the Quentin Johnston of this team.
Yeah, that one game that KJ Osborne, did he have? I'm looking up that game right now because he had an insane amount.
It was the gift, that Colts game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey. He also had a Bears game. He had 5 receptions, 117 yards. But Colts. Yeah, Colts, here we go. 10 receptions, 157 yards, 1 touchdown. Just, double.
That was the game they were losing 30-0 at halftime. And
yeah. Oh, and because Justin Jefferson did nothing at all either. And that was a fun one. That was crazy. Okay. We are coming back around. We are on the clock next. There's our Kenny Pickett that we ended up ignoring. Now he just keeps falling. We could probably still use one more running back. On the board, we got Chuba, we got Ty Chandler, we got Gus Edwards, Leonard Fournette, Zeke Foreman. Anything here jump out? We got 10 seconds.
Yeah, I think Hubbard's probably the best contingency bet of those guys. One, he could outright just play 3rd downs anyways, because Miles Sanders has been such a bad pass catcher the past couple of years. I think people are discounting that. A lot of people just think Miles is going to be a 3-down guy. And then if Miles were to get hurt, this is a team built to run the football. The Panthers have a really good young defense. They've got a really good offensive line. They've got a rookie quarterback. They've got bad wide receivers. Like the Panthers are screaming, like, we want to run the football and run it effectively. So Chuba Hubbard, I think has pretty strong contingent value, and maybe a standalone value like Jalen Warren, where he plays more 3rd downs, than expected.
Yeah, and he looked pretty solid last year, and without a doubt, the Panthers were like, you know what, we're going to run it with Deonta Foreman, and we're going to run it with Chuba last year because we didn't have really that much else. And now you bring in a rookie quarterback, and what are you going to do to protect your rookie quarterback? You're going to develop a strong run game. And Miles Sanders has not been a player since he's joined the league to be an extremely high volume back. And so I think he can still be efficient. I think he still has that in him. And we obviously saw it in Penn State. But there's reason to believe that Chuba will have a weekly actual role in that offense, in a run-first offense. And obviously with contingency value and the chance to actually be the pass catcher, there's some decent upside. Also, shout out to Tyler. Giving a late, but hey, Rich, we love you.
Tyler,
you're the GOAT. Love. All the love. All right, 3 picks. So 2, 5, 6, 2. I think we're done at running back with Eckler, Jones, Damian Harris, Jalen Warren, and Chuba. Probably need one more tight end with Freiermuth and Everett, which we can get with really, any of these last ones. And then probably 2 more wide receivers. That makes sense?
Yeah, I don't even know if we need a 3rd tight end. Maybe. You feel strongly about the 3rd tight end here?
For me, it's just in the 18th round. When you look at who's available, the tight ends just have a substantial leg up.
Gotcha.
All right. Hunter Renfrow. We have Devontae Adams. So maybe we make a little bet here on that Las Vegas offense. I don't think it's really necessary time to really go for that Corey Davis. We could probably still get that in the 17th round if we wanted. I'm not seeing too many strong correlation plays here without substantially reaching. And I don't want to go Josh Palmer.
No, Josh Palmer is probably a bridge too far for us.
Now, this is when it may be too many Chargers when you have to. No, I think I have like 0 Josh Palmer because in my mind, we saw the nut outcome, the perfect outcome for Josh Palmer last year, and he was not able to turn it into anything. And so when I'm drafting 18th rounders, I'm not drafting for the ones that I think are just going to have a role and just going to be on the field. I'm really looking for the ones that have some form of a breakout potential outside, either in game where it's like a Mecole Hardman who would like break out in that game for the long one, or someone who through earning their way because they're less well known, they're a rookie, maybe an injury in the field, has the ability to actually become and turn into like a every down, an every week's fantasy starter. And I just don't see that for Josh Palmer. I don't honestly know how it can happen.
Yeah, I don't know. Late round darts, we could do any of the Colts guys. I don't know if Alec Pierce or Josh Downs to come back with the Raiders for late round, like 17, 18 guys. Commanders, 49ers gives us nothing to chase, really.
There's one guy that I'm thinking about. Maybe what about Tim Patrick? He'd be a bring back to all of our Chargers.
I don't mind Tim Patrick. Like I said, I feel like Corey Davis has more overall upside, especially if, like, say Garrett Wilson got hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's another log there, like where if Judy gets hurt or Cortland Sutton gets hurt, like Tim Patrick's still probably more of like a median wide receiver, like 2-ish, 3 fringe guy. But I like that. I like Tim Patrick too as well.
Yeah, and for me, it's more of actually, we have about 5 more picks, so we got a little time. But yeah, it's just thinking through. We're going to be heavily invested in the Chargers. We need that game to be a blowout. Not a blowout, a shootout. Sometimes you just blank 50 minutes into a podcast. We need that game to be a shootout. And yes, we do have Cortland Sutton on the other side, but no reason we can't have Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick to really just invest heavily in that game. Quick review on tight ends, because this is what I was saying, where like in the 18th, I just like the tight ends because these guys are all like actually legitimate, mostly starting tight ends, are going to be on the field, have some actual upside. We'll take Tim Patrick here. And now looking at tight ends, I mean, stop me if any of these really jump out at you, but Hunter Henry, Noah Fant, Luke Musgrave, Michael Mayer, Trey McBride, Cade Otton, Zach Ertz, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to figure the Cardinals are just going to throw McBride to the fire this year. Like he just has to play a lot of snaps, right? Like there's like why if it's malpractice if he doesn't, like to give Zach Ertz any like significant run when he comes back from his injury, which we don't even know when he's coming back either. Yeah. Is another one. We saw the situation with Fant last year without JSN. It's just really hard, right? Like it's hard to see it. It's hard to draw like the complete upside angle. And he's a guy that I would love to see get a new chance and a new opportunity actually in an offense where he can get targets. But
we've been saying that since his like second year in the league, right?
I mean, it's a slow burn at the position. It's because he still is so young. I mean, it is crazy. It's crazy. Like if he had like a year 5 breakout, would it even be like that huge of a deal? And we saw Njoku last year kind of on the same trajectory, right? Like Njoku had a best year of his career. Just them adding JSN, they're going to play a lot more 3 wide receivers than 2 tight end sets. Can he earn enough targets over those guys? But yeah, Michael Mayer, because we have the Raiders. I don't know if that's too many Raiders for you.
Yeah, too many Raiders when we don't have the QB as well for me.
Yeah.
But I like the Trey McBride argument. I think come playoff time, like, yeah, they're playing Philly week 17. They could be down 30-0 at half, and Trey McBride is just he's in there. Throw him. Let's see what he's got. And yeah, I think Trey McBride, like, I think there's a chance that they actually cut Ertz. I know,
there's no reason for Ertz to really play for that team, to be honest.
Yeah, and like you're not going to get a trade for him. I don't know. So if it opens, I've actually drafted Zach Ertz and Trey McBride on teams before because I think that the best Trey McBride outcome is Zach Ertz gets cut and goes somewhere else, and that's probably the best outcome for Zach Ertz as well. So like I think there's some correlation aspect there. This was a fun draft. I'm going to let you recap it real quick. What are your thoughts on our position? So QB, Herbert, Goff. How you feeling?
Yeah, that I feel great about. I feel great about the quarterbacks. I mean, you look at Herbert's splits last year with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field, and he's basically top three in every category. Those guys just weren't healthy. So we're buying the Herbert bounce back. Goff's just like a really solid QB2. Will get us some spike weeks, plays indoors. We like that. Love the running backs too as well, especially if Aaron Jones contingent upside hits. Really the only other running back we were potential to add was Kamara versus Damian Harris. Like,
Yeah.
that was kind of like the only question we had. Other than that, we just let those guys come to us. And then wide receiver, if we go Bateman over Quentin Johnson, I might feel a little stronger.
Okay.
But I do think that that's still nothing wrong with having like this extreme Chargers stack here. If Chargers Broncos hits, we're going to be hitting.
We got to get there. And then once we're there, all we need is the 1 out of 16 games to go off that we're picking correctly. And we're happy with it. We are eating.
I would say Aaron Jones is probably the linchpin of this team, right? Like the one that sways it. Like the Aaron Jones outcome probably sways this team one way or the other, I would say. Round 6 Aaron Jones could be
good. Could be great.
We'll see. Could be good.
We'll see. All right. I love it. Chat, you were fantastic. Thank you for joining us. For those who were interested in us doing Superflex, I'm actually probably going to be doing a Superflex stream tomorrow. On the OTM channel, not ETR. So keep a lookout on my Twitter where we'll post that there. But joining kind of a marathon stream where we're talking a lot of football. And I think we'll do a Superflex. So if you were interested in Superflex, check that out. We'll do that later. I see you, William. Time to Chihuahua. We will do that tomorrow. Just look at my Twitter. Rich, Lord Reeves, I'll put your Twitter in the comments as well so people can see. But what else do you have going on with Sharp this summer? What's your summer looking like from a content perspective?
Yeah, I've been working on the draft kit all summer. It's a living, breathing kind of manifesto that by the time we get to your drafts, it's literally going to have everything that you need. So I'm doing like full on like deep dive positional tiers. If you want to read the quarterback tiers, they are free for everyone to read. I promise you will learn a plethora of things that you have not read about quarterbacks at all. So definitely go check those out over on the site.
Love it. All right. Well, this is fantastic. Chat, thank you so much. This is fun. As I said, follow me tomorrow for a Superflex. Otherwise, we'll be back here Thursday with another great guest in the boardroom. Have a great rest of your week. See you all later.